Okay, guys, sorry, we're back again. Just had a few issues with the lighting, just trying to get that best so you can see me. There we go, so it's looking much better. So, as I said, we're going to do a very quick live stream just to go through some of the elements of migration and some of the key things to help with your pack. Now, before I get into it, not that I'm sort of promoting or advertising, but this book, Factfulness, has been one I've been reading recently, and I think it's a really, really good book reflecting some of the stuff we're looking at with demography and changing patterns. And obviously, you know me, I like my statistics and like my facts. It's got nice little graphics and information in it. It talks a lot about sort of changes in population, and I think it's quite nice because it addresses misconceptions, misunderstandings we have of society. So, as I say, really good one to look at if you get a chance and you're a bit bored and you want to do a little bit of extra reading. It's one I would highly recommend. You've also got all the additional reading. I've been sending loads of videos and additional things to read to support migration. So what I'm going to do with you, I'm going to go through page 85, just looking at my pack, to 91. So I'm going to go through 6 pages, just really recap the materials, check you're happy with it, and you can fill this stuff in as part of your progression and working through the materials. So with migration and globalization, just looking on page 85, there's a few things on here for you to fill in. So you've got loads and loads of definitions at the very top of the page, and these are key in migration and globalization because there's so many different movement patterns. So there's immigration with people moving into a country, there's emigration with people leaving a country, there's migration, which is just movement, net migration, which is the sort of working out the difference between the movement in, movement out. And then with this, it is a tricky concept because you leave one country, you emigrate, and then you immigrate into a second country. So a lot of these processes, you're immigrating and emigrating at the same time. So as I say, lots of keywords. Make sure you've had a read of them. Check your understanding. I think the key ones there would be the migrations. I think natural change is an important concept. The idea that we have natural population change as birth rates and death rates change as well. And globalization is going to be a keyword throughout the entire course. So these are some of those keywords for you. Now, the task in the middle where it says summarize the nature of migration on page 85, you've got this table. I'll just hold one up so you can see to the camera, this table here. And it's a chart looking at migration patterns, net migration, and particularly in the UK. Now, it asks for the summary of the trends, and you can see there's a few lines on there and a few things happening. So in terms of immigration, which is the line at the top half of the page, I know it's black and white and it doesn't really very make it clear, but the solid black line at the top, which is gradually increasing from about 95 onwards, that's immigration. The bottom black line that sort of generally looks like it's going down, but actually the reality is a mirror, so it's increasing, is emigration. Net migration is the bar in the middle. So certain periods of time there's more emigration or a negative net migration, more people leave than arrive, and there are other points where it's a positive net migration, so more people have come in than left. So again, take a look at those graphs, but ultimately the general nature of the trend is immigration has steadily increased, emigration has also increased, but ultimately net migration's gone up overall in British society or in the UK. The key sort of trend, and I think something to be aware of, is when you look at the graph, there is this sort of slight decline after 2010. So really from 2008 onwards, there was a financial recession, a financial crisis, and it was less desirable to come to the UK. There was, earning an income and money was less of a pull factor. So you can look at this as a potential flaw in obviously some of the rhetoric about there's too much immigration, because it's been steadily increasing, but there has been a dip in it. So you can take a look at that graph, but ultimately migration's up, immigration's also increasing, net migration has increased, so we have more movement into the UK. So immigration into the UK has increased. But we're going to talk about the causes, the consequences, and obviously the overall benefits of that in a little bit. Now, push and pull factors. As you can imagine, a push factor is something that pushes you away or encourages you to leave a country. A pull factor pulls you in, and it brings you into a country. So pull factors for the UK would be stuff like the education system, maybe in terms of like political ideologies and equalities. You could talk about the rights of different groups and protected groups. You could talk about sort of institutions like the NHS, which is a big employer, so employment would be a big pull factor into the UK. Push factors would be things that encourage you to leave an area. So that could be famine, it could be natural disaster, it could be political oppression or some war. So things that would encourage you to leave somewhere, and a pull factor would bring you into them. And ultimately, the impact of globalization as well it's led to a massive increase in migration. There's a big movement of people now because of migration. So again, some things we're addressing a little bit. So on page 86, we've got a couple of questions, and it talks about the causes of this change in migration. Now, a lot of this is filled in. There's a few bits in here that you can add in from the PowerPoint, things you can check and add to your table. So when it talks about international trade, how that has led to an increase in migration, if you think about multinational corporations like Nike, Coca-Cola, these big companies that exist all over the world, that creates an opportunity for more migration because people can move and stay within a company, stay within a job, but move around the world. We've seen an increase in LATs, so living apart together families, because of this migration and movement. A lot of people move and migrate for work and live separately from their families. The UN also reported that there's been a 33% increase in migration between 2000 and 2013. So in a 13-year window, there's been a 33% increase in migration. So that's all come about because of international trade. It's also got links to travel and technology, which are some of the next points. So following into technology, as you can imagine, we are a better connected society. We have greater interconnectedness. Now, one of the things this does in terms of changing the family, you can think about LitWAC and the modified extended family. You can talk about LATs and the living apart together, again, as mentioned before. Technology's had a big change, and it allows us to stay connected even though we may be living countries apart. Now, the only thing that really is a sort of not mentioned in the PowerPoint I was thinking about in relation to this could be this almost a little bit about virtual tourism, loosely related, but the idea that you can you consider moving to a new country, you can go on Google Maps, you can go up and down the roads, you can look at areas, you can get a lot more information about moving to a different country. There's a lot more information, a lot more support, a lot more guidance, and you can build up and establish a connection with other people living in that area before you even move there. So again, these could be things that could help increase movement into an area, which may not have been the case in the past. Transport also comes into this, so cheap, affordable travel. So, 50, 60, 70 years ago, this was something that wasn't widely available, wasn't easily affordable. And the fact we now have cheaper travel and more areas, more destinations all tied together, it creates more migration, easier movement. Now, with migration, I should mention at the beginning, remember, this is migration. You move into an area, you immigrate in or you emigrate out, and that's for a year. So it isn't just a short, off the 6 weeks to travel, or you're going to Magaluf for 2 weeks. This is a year of residency in an area, and that's what kind of deems it as a migration. So it is just moving long term, isn't just going on holiday. And then political changes. So the EU, when it was obviously introduced ideas of freedom of movement, almost like this borderless or visaless movement of people, not putting any restrictions in place. This was all stuff that was really important, and it allowed a greater movement of people in and out of the UK and around Europe. So one of the things that we can think about is that this led to more emigration, people leaving the UK to go and live in Europe because they had that freedom. Incidentally, Brexit has had a big impact on this. So as a contemporary issue, Brexit has really changed migration patterns. And I think I've sent an article to you all about that. But, since the Brexit vote and the decision to leave, people leaving the UK, emigration, people leaving has gone up So we have an all-time high of 130,000 people leaving the UK. In terms of people coming into the UK, that's dropped down to around 47,000. So we have this weird situation where less people want to come in than in the past, more people leaving than in the past. So we are seeing some of the fallout of that Brexit vote. So as I say, they are the causes of changing patterns of migration, increased migration. The consequences on page 87, I'm just keeping on the time here. I don't want to keep it for too long. So the effect of migration, first one there, more family diversity. So movement of people into the UK from different cultures and different backgrounds, different family experiences, is going to create more diversity. And that's a really, really positive thing. We need diversity. And one of the things that Britain can be proud of is its multicultural society. So this really contributes to that. And you might see LATs, dual heritage families. You might see, obviously, diversity in terms of family structures with African Caribbean families are more likely or have a tendency to be single parent families. Indian families, again, have that tendency to be more likely to be extended. Now, it's not saying every African Caribbean or every Indian family will have that structure, but statistically, there is this lean sort of tendency for that to be the case. We've then got increased population. So more movement in will increase the population. That means that we have more workers, and that can be a really positive thing for dependency ratio, reducing the dependency ratio of the country. Downside of that is housing people. It could be putting a strain on public services, which I will come to in a second. The strain on public services, now that is a short-term problem, I think, in some of the ideas that people who migrate into the UK often will be working. That reduces dependency ratio. Obviously, they'll eventually retire and get older and retire and become dependent, but in that time, they would have paid into the system and built up pensions. In terms of people having more children and increasing the number of children, again, I think that's a short-term sort of problem, short-term hit, that we will have more children. That will mean more school places, more midwives, more paediatric services will increase. The cost of those children going through education will increase. But longer term is those children will grow up, they'll get jobs, they're paying to the system, and that will reduce dependency ratio overall. So there is these short-term negative effects, but longer term, far more beneficial. And also it's going to lower the average age of the population. So again, most people who migrate in are young, they're working, they're fit, they will have larger families generally. So generally Eastern European migrants tend to have more children, have larger families. So this again lowers the average age of the UK population. And again, that's really good for dependency ratio in terms of longer term support. Short term consequences of more children, but as ultimately I say, long term gains. So that's the causes and the consequences. Now, just as the sort of summary task, you've got 87 on bottom 87. There is a summary table where you can just try and think about how the impacts of birth rates and death rates and demographic trends have affected these areas. So family becoming smaller, creating more diversity in family structures, grandparents being more involved. So think back over what we've done. Just try and put a little summary into those pages. Page 88, again, just some tasks for you to work on. So the article to read about the impact of Brexit on families, on migration, and then sort of trying to think about the wider impact. So just as we talk about causes and consequences, you know, it talks about death rate, birth rate, change, migration, trying to tie this all together. What are the overall causes and the overall consequences? And then 89 has the key thinkers, which again, you can fill in yourself. You can go through the pack, summarize what those key thinkers have to say. The only bits I wanted to go through with you was the essay planning. So on page 89, very bottom, you've got 2 questions and it asks you for 2 ways. Now, I've got some ideas and some answers that I can give you. You can put in. If you've got your own and you've had some slightly different ideas, obviously email me, ask me to check them. I'm happy to do that. So the first question is outline and explain 2 ways that increased life expectancy has affected roles and relationships in the family. And that would be a 10 marker, which is just, here's your point, here's the impact of it. So there's no item, there's no evaluation. In that really is point 1, here it is, boom, this is what it does. and everything needs to tie back to the question. So the 2 ways I came up with, I've got 3 ways actually, but I'll give you all of them and you can choose which ones you would prefer to use if you were going to use them. So greater life expectancy. The first one I thought about was widows. So with life expectancy going up, you're going to have people living longer, and you're going to see more people who are widowed, and obviously they lose their partner. Now that is going to grow and create an increase in single person households, and that would change family structures. It change roles in terms of people having to pick up new types of relationship in terms of this change. The other way I thought about roles changing was, as we've seen before, the role of grandparents. So greater life expectancy, grandparents become more involved in childcare, so it changes the role of grandparents in the family. So they become more involved in childcare. They're sort of care providers. You could even look at it possibly on the other side of children having to care for their parents. So older parents having to be cared for by their children. So that again changes the role of children and parents, from parents caring for kids to kids now caring for parents. In terms of relationships and roles as well, the other point I had was about this increase in the variety of relationships and roles. So greater life expectancy creates an increase in different family structures, that risk that Beck in postmodernism talked about. So we might see more divorce, more marriage, more reconstituted families, more single person households, more single parent families. So all of this would change. The second question, explain how migration would affect the structure of the family. So I thought about, as you mentioned, Eastern European migrants tend to have higher numbers of children, so that would increase the fertility rates. They often have those children younger as well. So again, that changes some of the structures of the family. So you might see more potential for sort of larger families. The other one I thought about was variety and diversity. So as we mentioned before, single parent families, extended families, dual heritage families, these would all increase. And this again would change the structure, all having different structures and relationships and sort of templates for family life. Now, the question on page 90, again, 2 ways in which changing birth rates have affected the structure. When it comes to demography questions, you're rarely going to be given a question of why has the birth rate gone down? Why has death rate increased? It's always going to be how has the birth rate changed or death rate changed or migration? How has that affected family structures? How has it affected the role of women? How has it affected the experience of childhood? So it's always going to be tied in to another topic area. So while we go through the materials and get a foundation, going through the materials is going to be key. Now, the points I came up with and some of the ideas I thought about was obviously one, change in family structure. Birth rate's gone down, less children, smaller families. So the structure has become smaller in terms of less children in those families. You could even, and I kind of extended it, to think about the role of women within that. So less children means women return to work. So it could lead to more neo-conventional families, dual earner families. So again, the structure has changed, become more equal. The second point I thought about was, again, birth rate declining, kind of making connections to postmodernism, individualism, choice, is that there could be an increase in childless couples, more single person households. Again, so changing structures of families that there are no children in them at all. And then glossary on page 91. I realize we're kind of just want to start wrapping up now. So the concepts on here, the order I've got them in, and again, you can check your own. So I've got with, start with total fertility rate. The second one is infant mortality rate. We then have demography, life expectancy, dependency ratio, net migration, Beveridge report, individualization, sorry, I'm just using my shorthand, birth rate, globalization, death rate. We've got positive aging population, and natural change. So there are the key concepts on page 91. So the key thing here is go through those packs, fill in those materials. You'll be getting your homework, your work email for the next 2 days. I'll be sending that tomorrow morning with some tasks for this week. Next week is half term. So use that time to have a break, have a rest, or catch up on the work if you haven't had a chance to be up to date with it all. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Hopefully this has been any help. Leave any comments if on the channel itself, or email me if you've got any questions, queries, or anything you'd like to check. And hopefully you found this of use. And thanks for watching. All right, take care.